Good day, student. Are you excited as I am to be back on your biology virtual lesson? Brought to you by IOTA Virtual Learning. I remain your biology tutor, Mr. Kehinde Adeshina, and I trust you've been enjoying my biology lessons. In the lesson of today, we will be looking at the system of support in animals, talking about skeletal and muscular system. Let us look at the outline of today's lesson. In today's lesson, we will be discussing the definition of skeleton, the biological importance of skeleton, the types of skeleton, the types of skeletal materials. Then we will look at the divisions of mammalian skeleton. Then later we'll look at the bones of the vertebral column, the bones of the guidus, and lastly, the bones of the arms and the leg. Come along, let's dive in. The body of animal is supported by various structures. Some of these important structures include the skeletal and the muscular system, and we are going to look at this system in details in this lesson. The skeletal system of animals consists of bones, cartilage, or corticals. Now, what is the skeleton? The skeleton is a framework or structure that provides shape, support, rigidity, movement, and protection for the body. The skeleton of animals are made up of various skeletal materials. These include bone, which is found in vertebrates like fish, amphibians, reptiles, apes, and mammals. We also have the cartilage. Cartilage are found associated with bone in the skeleton of vertebrates, and they are also the main skeletal material of cartilaginous fishes. The corticals or chitin, they are found in arthropods like crabs, crayfish, insects, spiders, millipede, and centipedes. Lastly, we have the synovial fluid, which is the main skeletal material that provides support in worms and other worm-like organisms. Let's look at the structure of the bone. The bone is a very tough tissue and the major component of the vertebrate skeleton. It consists of living bone cells called osteocytes, protein fiber called collagen, and mineral materials, mainly calcium phosphate and calcium carbonate. The mineral and non-living components make up 2/3 of the mass of the bone. As a result, it is a stronger and more rigid tissue than the cartilage. A bone is usually consisting of a hard outer layer called the shaft and a spongy or hollow cavity filled with bone marrows. Examples of organisms which bones are found include vertebrates like bony fishes, toad, lizard, snake, birds, and mammals. Now let's look at cortical. The cortical is composed of a protein material called chitin and a thin waterproof layer of wax. Chitin is a non-living substance. Therefore, animals with this type of skeletal material can only grow by a process called molting or ecdysis. In this process, an organism sheds off its old skeleton and puts on a new one. Cortical is an exoskeletal material found in the outside of the body. Examples of organisms with this type of skeletal material include arthropods like insects, crabs, scorpion, prawns, crayfish, and scorpion. Now let's look at cartilage. Cartilage is a tissue found in the skeleton of complex vertebrates like mammals. It consists of living cells called chondroblasts, carbohydrates, and protein fiber. It is a tough and flexible tissue that has great tensile strength. It acts as shock absorber, cushioning the effect of bone moving against each other. Examples of organisms which possess cartilage are cartilaginous fishes like shark, rays, and mammals generally. However, cartilage is the main skeletal system of cartilaginous fishes. There are 3 types of cartilage found in mammals. These include 1. Hyaline cartilage. This is found in the trachea and the bronchi and keeps them open. It is also found in the surface of movable joints. It is found in the protruding part of the nose which supports it. 2. Fibrocartilage. Fibrocartilage is a tougher cartilage than hyaline. It is found in the disc between the small bones called vertebrae at the vertebral column. Lastly is the elastic cartilage, which is found in the external ear and the epiglottis. Types of skeleton. There are three main types of skeleton. These are exoskeleton, endoskeleton, and hydrostatic skeleton. Let's look at them one after the other. Hydrostatic skeleton. This is the type of skeleton possessed by soft-bodied animals. They are made up of fluid called synovial fluid. They are secreted into the space of the body. The fluid presses against the muscular wall of the animal, causing the muscles to contract, thereby exerting pressure against the fluid. This helps to maintain the shape and form of the animal. Organisms that have hydrostatic skeleton include earthworm and sea anemone. Exoskeleton. Exoskeleton is the type of skeleton which is found in the outside or external part of the body of some animals. Most invertebrates possess this type of skeleton made up of cortical. Chitin is the main non-living component of this type of skeleton. Examples of animals with exoskeleton include invertebrates like Euglena, Paramecium, Hydra, tapeworm, snail, insects, prawn, crabs, spiders, millipede, and centipedes. Now let's look at the biological importance of the skeleton. The skeleton helps to provide support for the different organs and parts of the body. It also helps to protect the soft tissues of the body against external injury. It assists in movement. Without the skeleton, animals will not be able to move from place to place. It also functions for mineral homeostasis. It helps to balance different mineral elements in the body. The skeleton is also the site for blood cell production, mainly the red blood cell and the white blood cell in fetus. The ribs and the sternum also assist in the process of breathing by providing support and protection for the diaphragm. Let's look at the human skeleton in details. The skeletal system of humans and other mammals are grouped into two major parts. These are the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton. The axial skeleton is made up of the skull, the vertebral column or backbone, the ribs, the sternum, and the breastbone. The appendicular skeleton is made up of the limbs, that is the bones of the hands and legs, and the girdles, that is the pectoral and the pelvic girdles. Let's look at the bones of the axial skeleton, starting with the skull. The skull is the skeleton of the head. It protects the brain and delicate organs such as the eyes, the inner part of the ear, the nose cavity, and the jaws. It also bears the teeth which aid in grinding of food. The vertebral column, also called the backbone or the spinal column. This is the central supporting system of the skeleton. The vertebral column forms the backbone of vertebrates and protects the spinal cord. It is made up of 5 groups of small bones called vertebrae. In mammals, it consists of 33 vertebrae. The vertebrae are held one to another with strong ligaments, having compressible cartilage pads called intervertebral disc between successive vertebrae. The bones of the chest include sternum or breastbone, which shield the heart and the lungs. It also protects the stomach while serving as attachment for tendons. The ribs form a protective cage around the thoracic cavity and moves up and down to aid respiration or breathing. Let's look at the bone of the limbs, the forelimbs, that is the bone of the arm. The bone of the arm consists of a long bone which attached to the shoulder and it is called humerus. It is followed by two pieces of bone called radius and ulna. These pieces of bone serve as support for the upper arm and also for attachment of muscles which are responsible for movement in manipulation of objects. The hand region consists of the bone of the wrist called carpus and metacarpus. This is followed by the bones of the fingers called phalanges. They help in gripping of objects, writing, and playing of instruments. The bone of the upper leg is consisting of the longest bone of the body called the femur bone, which fits into the ball and socket joint of the hip region. This is followed by two pieces of bone called tibia and fibula, which meet with the femur bone at the knee joint with the aid of a structure called patella. The femur bone with the tibia and fibula bears the weight of the body. Next is the bone of the ankle, which is known as tarsus and metatarsus. Lastly is the bone of the foot called the phalanges. The tarsus and the metatarsus articulate with the phalanges to allow for flexible movement of the foot. Let's look at the pectoral or the shoulder girdle. The shoulder girdle consists of a flat bone called scapula or shoulder blade. It also consists of clavicle or what we call the collarbone. They are attached to the long bone of the hand and provide support during movement. Lastly, the pelvic or the waist girdle. The pelvic girdle consists of three flat bones that are fused together. They are called the ischium, the ilium, and the pubis. The two halves of the pelvic girdle is joined with a fissure called pubic symphysis. The pelvic girdle bears the upper weight of the body and transfers this to the lower part of the body. It also helps to protect the reproductive organs of the body and serve as attachment for the long bone of the leg. Let's look at the vivid view of these different types of bone. Up here is the pectoral girdle with the attachment of the long bone of the hand called humerus, the flat bone, shoulder blade. Here is the pelvic or the waist girdle showing the ischium, ilium, and the pubic symphysis. And up here is the long bone of the hand, the bone of the legs, showing the femur bone, the humerus, radius and ulna, fibia and tibula, tarsus and metatarsus, and the phalanges. And here is the long bone of the hand called humerus and the long bone of the leg called the femur bone. And here we have the bones of the fingers and the bones of the foot, showing the phalanges, the tarsus, the metatarsus, and the carpus and the metacarpus. Up here is the position of the vertebral column or the backbone, consisting of small bones joined together and are called vertebra. These are the different vertebrae that are contained in the vertebral column. At the neck region of man, there are 7 pieces of vertebra called cervical vertebra. The first two are called the atlas and the axis, and they allow for nodding and turning of the head. Next is 12 pieces of vertebra at the chest region called thoracic vertebra. They serve as attachment for the ribs and also protect the lungs and the heart. Next is the upper abdominal cavity called the lumbar vertebra. They are also 5 in number. They help to protect delicate organs at the upper abdomen. The next type of vertebra are called sacral vertebra. They are 5 in number also, and they are found at the lower abdomen. They help to protect delicate organs such as the liver and the spleen. Lastly are 4 pieces of vertebra called the tail or caudal vertebra. These pieces of vertebra are fused together to join with the pelvic region of the body. and they help to protect the reproductive organs at the pelvic region. Let's have a review of what we have learned so far. The supporting structures in animal include the skeletal and the muscular system. The skeletal system of animal consists of bone, cartilage, or cortical. The skeleton is a framework or structure of the body that provides shape, support, rigidity, movement, and protection for the body. The type of skeletal material include bones, cartilage, corticals, and synovial fluid. The types of skeleton include exoskeleton, endoskeleton, and hydrostatic skeleton. And they are found in invertebrates like arthropods, invertebrates, and in worm-like organisms like sea anemones, respectively. The human skeleton is divided into axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton. The axial skeleton consists of the skull, the chest bone, the ribs cage, and the vertebral column, or the backbone. The appendicular skeleton is made up of the limbs, that is, the bone of the hand and legs, and the girdles, that is, the pectoral or shoulder girdle, and the pelvic or waist girdle. The bone of the chest protects the heart and the lungs and allow for articulation of the ribs to form the ribs cage. The bone of the hand consists of the long bone called humerus, followed by radius and ulna, which are the bones of the arm. Then next is the carpus and metacarpus, which are the bones of the wrist. Then next is the phalanges, that is the bones of the finger. The bones of the leg consist of the longest bone of the body called the femur bone, located at the lap region, followed by the bone of the leg, which are tibia and fibula. Next is the bone of the ankle, which are called tarsus and metatarsus. Lastly is the bone of the foot, called the phalanges. Now let's see how much we have learnt in this lesson by reviewing our WAEC past questions. The first question we will look at is question 10 from 2004, and it says, the axial skeleton is made up of the following: A. Skull, vertebral column, ribs cage, and sternum. B. Limbs and girdles. C. Lumbar and thoracic vertebra. And D. Vertebral column and lumbar vertebra. Look at the pairing of the options and pick your answer. The correct option is option A, the skull, vertebral column, ribs cage, and the sternum. Option B, the limbs and the girdles are part of appendicular skeleton. Option C, the lumbar and thoracic vertebra are just part of the vertebral column. And option D, vertebral column and lumbar vertebra are also just part of the vertebral column. The next question is question 25 from 2006, and it says, which of the following vertebrae provide articulating surface for the ribs? A. Thoracic, B. Lumbar, C. Cervical, and D. Sacral. What do you think the answer is? The correct option is option A, thoracic vertebra. They are found at the chest region, where they allow the articulation of the ribs to form the ribs cage. Option B, the lumbar, is wrong because lumbar is found at the upper abdominal cavity, where ribs are not found. Option C, cervical vertebra, is also wrong because cervical vertebra is found at the neck region. Option D is also wrong because sacral vertebra are found at the lower abdominal cavity. The next two questions are question 13 and 14 from 2009. Question 13. The longest bone in the body is A. Humerus, B. Femur, C. Scapula, D. Tibia. Which of these bones do you think is the longest in the body? The correct option is option B, femur. Femur bone is located at the lap region and it is the longest bone of the body. Question 14. Which of the following structure is not a skeletal material? A. Chitin, B. Cartilage, C. Bone, and D. Muscle. What do you think is the answer? The correct option is option D. Muscle. Chitin, cartilage and bone are skeletal materials, while muscles are the components of the muscular system. The next question is question 10 in 2014. The diagram below is an illustration of a mammalian bone. Use it to answer question 10 and 11. Question 10. The bone illustrated above is the A. Femur bone, B. Humerus, C. Radius, and D. Ulna. What do you think is the answer? Look at the structure of the bone critically. The correct option is option B. Humerus. The bone illustrated here have a rounded head which fits into the scapula of the pectoral girdle. Question 11. The function of the part labeled Roman figure 1 is to A. Fit into the glenoid cavity of the scapula, B. Fit into the acetabulum of the pelvic girdle, C. Support the lower arm, and D. Prevent the arm from bending backward. What do you think is the answer? The correct option is option A. The head of the humerus, labeled Roman figure 1 here, fits into the glenoid cavity of the scapula. Option B is wrong because it is the femur bone that fits into the acetabulum of the pelvic girdle. And option D is wrong because it is the elbow bone that prevents the hand from bending backward. Lastly is question 12 from 2023. The diagram below is an illustration of a structure in the skeletal system of human. Study it and answer question 12 and 13. Question 12. The illustrated structure is a part of the A. Cervical vertebra, B. Axial skeleton, C. Axis vertebra, and D. Appendicular skeleton. The correct option is option B. Axial skeleton. The structure above is the skull, and the skull is part of the axial skeleton. That will be all for this lesson. Well done, and thank you for paying rapt attention. Keep reading and keep studying your past WAEC questions so as to test your knowledge and familiarize yourself with the patterns of questions in the exam. I wish you success. God bless you. Bye.